Hello? Hello? Is anybody out there?
Welcome to All the Shit with Tom and Will.
What's up, and welcome back to All the Shit. This is my good friend Elvir. Elvir is an excellent co-host to step in today, especially with the question we're going to be tackling. Professionally, I know that a lot of the work you do involves relationships, relationship to self, relationship with other people, and helping, in your case, students learn how to manage tough situations in life. Your background has lent a lot to the way that you see the world and how you're able to thrive in that professional capacity. We haven't aired the conversation with you yet, but for those of you who are interested, that's forthcoming. Elvir and I sat down and had a very long and detailed conversation about his history and his personal story, which is incredibly powerful, but it lends a lot more color into what you're going to hear from him today. Elvir, thank you for agreeing to sit down again and join me for this.
Thank you, my friend. I really appreciate it. It's an honor to contribute. Thanks a lot.
Since the last time we talked, we've shifted a little bit and we've actually started answering direct questions from young viewers who are trying to sort through some of the challenging issues in life. It's all the shit. It's all the shit of life. That's what we're here to talk about. And so what I love about having, I'm going to call you an expert, because everyone is an expert in some facet of life based on your own experience, which is unique to you. And that goes for this individual whose conversation and question we're going to be talking about as well. It deals, in this case, with academics and feeling like you were in a good place and you take one step up and all of a sudden things are just confusing. You can't wrap your mind around it. You feel like you're falling behind. You feel like you're worthless. And I think what's interesting about you is your timeline of when you, so quick background, very abbreviated, but you immigrated to this country. You came here as a refugee and you came right in the middle of high school. Is that right?
Right at the start of high school. So age 14, I completed 8th grade here, 1 year of middle school and then high school.
Yeah, so coming in right in the middle of this most challenging time of life for a lot of people.
Yep.
And you're coming in not really speaking English.
Barely.
Yeah.
Barely.
English as a second language dropped into the middle of this. So I think this question will carry a lot of resonance for you. And I think you'll be able to provide context and color around this in a way that I can't. My perspective is going to be a little bit different. I also relate on a certain level. But let's dive into this, man.
Let's read a question that came. You found a great one. I am a 9th grade or 13-year-old with 9th grade. And last year I was really smart. Like I understood everything that was going on, but this year is totally different. I'm not in the United States, so I don't go to high school until next year. I have homework this year, and I can barely grasp concepts that are given to me. I have completely new teachers this year, and I feel so far behind since all of my friends are able to understand. But I can't, and I feel like I'm never going to be able to achieve great things anymore because of how bad my grades are dropping. Everything stresses me out, and I've tried doing homework on my own and with a friend, and either way, I end up having a mental breakdown. Math has always been a struggle for me, but I never thought that math could ever make my head genuinely hurt so much. I want to go back to last year when I was super smart and knew what I was doing. If anyone has any advice on what they have done to help themselves, please let me know because I'm really struggling here. So that's the question.
I feel like this is another one of those things that when you're in it, it feels like it's very individual and specific to you, but everyone goes through something like this at a certain time.
As I'm reading it, there's a mixture of nostalgia, wanting to go back to school and just be this careless kid almost in a way, but at the same time I have PTSD from almost same exact situation. The reason why I feel like I could relate to this is that when I entered the 8th grade, obviously a small little difference in terms of math skills. For example, I was in 7th grade in Croatia and I failed math. I actually failed math and I came into the 8th grade.
For a little bit of background, you came from Croatia.
Yeah, I was in a refugee camp in Croatia for 3 years. During those 3 years, we were able to go to school even during that time. My 5th, 6th, and 7th grades were in another country, in Croatia. Same language, but time different country. I remember in 7th grade, all the other classes were fine. I was doing great. I would say great, like middle of the road, C student kind of a deal. But I really suffered in math, and I actually failed math. I was supposed to repeat math in the following grade. And that's when we came to the United States. And that's the only thing I understood in 8th grade is math, because it's numbers.
So you went from failing math
Yes.
and needing to repeat it to then changing countries, languages,
Yeah.
everything.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden math was the only
Math-
thing that you felt confident in.
Math's the only thing I understood. It's just numbers.
Universal language.
It's universal language, right? When I read this question and I started to think, how can I provide any type of advice for this person? Was clearly thinking of themselves as less than. They're thinking of themselves as quote unquote stupid or dumb, which, by the way, is completely incorrect. You should never think of yourself as completely dumb or stupid just because you're struggling in a subject. You just entered a phase where you have to step back a little bit and go back to the root cause of why it's causing you to struggle. My advice is always go back to the fundamentals. If you're struggling with a problem, that problem within any type of math has a foundation. And you always have to go back to the foundation. I always worked either with an instructor, meaning a professor, or with a peer. And sometimes those peers would change. Tutors would change. And lo and behold, there's always one that worked out. So my advice to that person, if you're working with a classmate and it's not working out, try a different classmate or ask to be partnered with somebody who is a little more, you understand them a little better when it comes to explanation of certain problems. Because what it came down to for me when I was learning math is you're not explaining the problem for me correctly. I'm not understanding the problem. So it's communication at the baseline of it. That's my first go-to. That's when I started to, oh, it's my classmate that's explaining it better to me than my professor.
I think that's a good way to look at it. It is try everything that you can, change some variables and figure out. In this case, it's math. But honestly, if it's any subject, it's the context in which you're learning it. So for me, I completely relate to this because I still am what I consider math illiterate. So in high school, even in middle school, as soon as you started introducing variables and X and Y, my head just went, no, that doesn't work for me. You mean I can make this number anything I want? No, there's rules that you have to follow. Wait, so it's imaginary and there's rules? Like, it's too much for me.
Yeah.
I struggled mightily, and part of my identity as a good student then gets called into question. And I think that's part of the issue here too, is I've been so good up until this point that all of a sudden I'm confused. I'm feeling like the way that I've seen myself as a good student is now threatened in my own mind.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of insecurity that comes with that, because if this is true and I'm not a good student, what else that I believe about myself is not true? And it's a very slippery slope. So for me, what I had to do, and I failed trigonometry twice. I failed it as a junior in high school. I had to retake it, and I failed it again. It didn't affect my ability to graduate, thankfully, because it was an extra math class that my mom made me take. Thanks, Mom. But it still put me in that place of feeling like I'm an idiot. I don't deserve to be walking across this stage. There's sophomores in my class that are smarter than me. But you're looking at the holistic picture, and you have to look at what are the things that you are good at. Because as soon as you get into high school, as soon as you start moving into advanced placement or more specific, specialized areas of any subject, if it's not your strong suit, it's going to be harder for you than it is for somebody else. And at a certain point, you just have to say, I can't be an expert at everything. Obviously, math is not my thing. So what do I have to do to get through it and pass while focusing on the things that do light me up, the things that I am good at, the things I do enjoy? You can't completely exclude it because you need it for the general curriculum to get through and pass and move on. But don't look at it as the end of the world if all of a sudden you're realizing a subject is something you're not good at.
That's a great point. That makes perfect sense even for me. My degree in college was communications because math is not my strong suit. I didn't go into engineering because I knew that math is not my strong suit. Going through algebra, geometry, that was my sweet spot, and I didn't go past that point. So I was like, where is my strength? And so I was honing my strengths while obviously still working on the sort of quote unquote weakness, and not lose the sight of who I am in all of those things. And that who I am is basically, yes, I can't be good at every subject. I'm never going to be good at every subject. It's a given. But you do have these quote unquote God-given talents. There's things that fall into place for you, and you just have to cash in on it. Math may not be my subject, For me, it was history. Loved history. Loved it just because of how it made me feel as I studied it. So I would ask people, and I would tell you, it's like, how does it make you feel when you're actually studying a subject or doing a problem or
Are
solving
you
an issue?
engaged
Yeah.
in it, or is it something that you're struggling to
Yeah.
stay focused on because your mind keeps getting pulled in other directions?
Yeah.
And those are really easy ways to start determining this is something I'm into
Yeah.
versus something I need to focus on enough to
Right.
get by.
Yeah. Notice that. Notice how you are reacting to whatever subject you're in. Obviously, Tom, I don't know if it's 100% for you, but to me, professors and teachers would really make the subject. So sometimes, yes, what lights me up is, that professor is really passionate about that, whatever that is, would it be history, would it be geometry, would it be calculus, whatever. And you can feed off of that. I get that part. But it's also noticing what's going on in your head, in your mind, as you are reading about Babylon. To me, it was like, oh, this is so fascinating. The Roman Empire, my gosh, they went through all of this. This is real stuff. So I was just drawn to that. And no, I wasn't drawn to solving for X,
Right.
which is okay. And I struggled very much, struggled with language, struggled with what the passion is behind all of this. So my advice to anybody that is struggling or seeing themselves as, hey, I'm not doing well in this grade, even though I was the smartest person in this subject, hey, it's okay. Just pull back the curtain slightly bit more. Find out what's making you passionate. It may not be the math. And the biggest problem is with what I've noticed people do and kids do as well is compare themselves to their classmate. Comparing yourself to your classmate will not make you progress at all.
No, that's never a good way to go.
Never a good way to go. So here you are in a classroom of another 20 people, 30 people, doesn't matter. Guess what? This is your opportunity to either do those things, either focus on this problematic issue, which is comparing yourself to others, or really hone in your craft and focus on yourself and who you are at that moment and what excites you. My issue that I struggle with as well is constantly looking over my shoulder and looking at the classmates next to me. It's like how they're doing, what's their grade, all these other things. And then boom, all of a sudden it's either making me sad about my situation and make me feel super depressed, or it's, I got a better grade than my classmate and I am super happy.
And it can give you anxiety too, right? Because everything feels like a competition. I need to be the best. I need to be in the top of my class, all these things. I mean, at the end of the day, for high school in particular, a higher GPA might help you get into an elite college if that's your goal. But quite honestly, if you don't know what you want to do,
Right.
that doesn't really matter as much because even in college, once you get there, if you select a certain major, who's to say that you're not going to change that major? And even if you don't, who's to say that you're going to get the job you want in that field? There's so many variables that go into it. Back it all the way down to high school and say, hey, I just need to get through this to the best of my ability. Putting the pressure on yourself to be the best is, in my opinion, it's going to be more detrimental to you in the long run than just doing your best without having to be the best. There's a big difference there.
Society already puts pressures on us anyway, and you doing it to yourself, you're putting yourself between a rock and a hard place automatically. Be good to yourself. Take care of yourself through this process because, the world is already putting a little pressure on you. Where you're going to be in your grade, how good your GPA is going to be, all these other things. And some days are great, some days are not great. Same with subjects. Some subjects are so attractive to you and you're honing your skill at the same time during that time. Some subjects are not that great, and that's okay. And at the same time, don't compare yourself to others. Life is a marathon here. If you do that to yourself, you'll basically burn out. You're going to cause a larger issue. Before we started filming this, we talked about a book that talks about habits that you can get into. And you can get into changing into a habit that's great for you, that changes your life. Or you can get into a habitual thing that really can lead down this path where it's hard to come back from. And I noticed I only excelled in subjects if I focused on how I'm doing in that subject, not compared to others. It's just how I'm doing day to day in that subject. That could be a habitual thing. You can create a habit around that.
The counterweight to that is don't start with the habit of as soon as you don't do as well as you think you should or that you expect yourself to do, beating yourself up. Because as soon as you start the negative self-talk and putting yourself in a category of stupid or unintelligent, weak, whatever it is, that quickly can perpetuate, and you will tell yourself a lie that's going to carry forward into other areas of your life.
Certainly.
To Elvir's point, knock off the negative self-talk, because it's not true. It's all just relative to where you are right now in a particular subject, particular time in life, but it doesn't mean anything about you as a person on the whole. So don't fall into that trap.
Great point. It's just a small part of you that you can make adjustments to. Every single day you wake up, you can make a small adjustment that, it can change your life. And maybe, yesterday I had a bad day. I had a lot of negative self-talk, but that's not going to happen today. I'm not going to let that happen. I'm not going to allow that.
There's always going to be negative self-talk, but you have to be able to identify it when it happens and call yourself out on it. Because as soon as you start going down that road, if you don't identify it, you don't notice that, why am I treating myself like shit? Then it will continue. But there's, just like you said, same with me. There's days where I look in the mirror and I'm like, you are a complete piece of shit. Why are you doing X, Y, or Z? That can last a day, 2 days sometimes. But then you catch yourself and you say, you know what? This is not that big of a deal. And it's certainly not worth making myself feel like crap over. Because it's one small thing.
You know what I do every time I'm in that mindset? If I'm doing something and I'm not really that good at it and it's making me feel bad because I suck at it, you know what? I'm going to switch it up. I'm going to come back to it. But now I'm going to do something I'm really good at. And just it lifts up your spirits. All right, I am not that good at math. But guess what? I can draw like crazy. I'm just going to draw. I'm just going to doodle. I'm just going to let it loose.
Most of my math homework was just doodles.
Yeah, there you go. Just let it loose. Just let it do its thing and come back to it. Release some of that pressure. Obviously, for some others, it may be a different thing. Some people go for a run, whatever makes that shift for you. And that is the sort of self-care portion throughout this process. Because, we all enter a period where, like weather, it can have super rainy days and make us feel all gloomy, but guess what? There is a rainbow after that.
Aww.
There you go. There you go. And then why is there a rainbow? Because there's a sun behind it. The sun will rise, you have a beautiful day the next day, and it repeats itself. So it's just it's up and down. It's just knowing how to manage that up and down. That is the secret behind it.
And that's all of life.
Yeah.
It ebbs and flows.
See? Yeah.
It doesn't matter if it's a particular subject or a particular moment in life, but you're going to have ups and downs, and learning how to overcome them and see yourself in a positive light through all of it, regardless of what's currently in front of you. Just maintaining that positive self-image. Once you get past that hurdle, you're going to be in a much better position to accept what's coming next, because you will not let yourself get drawn into that lie that you're a piece of shit.
Yeah. You can get sucked into that mindset, and guess what? You did it to yourself. And if you did it to yourself, that means you can come out from the other end yourself. It's kind of like if there's no love, there's hate. What's the opposite of hate? Love. What's the opposite of light? Dark. If there is self-hate, there's certainly self-love. You can come to a realization that if you're getting yourself in a negative mindset, guess what? You can also go the opposite way. Because if you're capable to go in one way, you're capable of going the other way as well. And sometimes you need some help. Sometimes you do need to talk to someone. Sometimes you need to seek a professional and things like that. Totally normal. There's no taboo around it. Seek assistance if need so. But guess what? The power is in your hands. And you are not powerless. You have full power. You have a chance. You have the ability. And you just need to take it.
We've talked a lot about this specific issue with math, but I'm curious to hear your take from a broader perspective, coming in with English as a second language and being dropped into high school. What were some of the other tips and tools that you used to stay, or even just get yourself to the point where you felt confident and competent in all subjects?
I never saw myself as stupid or dumb. I saw myself as lazy. So I was just lazy. I'm just not putting in 100%. I'm putting in 70, 80. And because of that, what was suffering is how I learned a language. So I wanted to be confident around my peers of how I talk day to day. So if they only knew X amount of words, if they use X amount of words, if they're listening to this type of music, or if they are talking in a certain way or certain accents or slang, that's all I needed to know.
You were just trying to fit in with the culture that was available to you to integrate yourself.
Right. So you were doing it out of the sort of fear of being an outsider. You want to be on the inside, so to speak. Now, there's a problem with that because the academics is another story. That's a different level for me. And I struggled there very much. But I noticed that I have a full capability of integrating myself into the culture of day to day, like with your friends or classmates. And I can talk like them, I can understand them fully, and I can read between the lines. So not only that you know the language, you understand the nuances between how communication works, meaning you understand the cultural inferences, you understand the linguistic elements that come in between, like the words y'all or yonder or everything like that, depending on what area you exist in. If I can do that with day-to-day things, I can be placed in an academic environment and probably do the same exact thing and just put myself on a different level.
So you're leveraging that same toolkit and applying it in a different part of your life.
Yes. When I transferred from a community college into a 4-year university, I was automatically a full-time student. I'm a full-time this thing, full-time that thing. I was a full-time student in high school. However, I was also in the mindset of just wanting to get integrated into the whole thing. So I never saw myself as a student. All I saw myself as this immigrant, this foreigner trying to belong. Now, years later, I am a full-time student, and that's who I am. I never saw somebody that's trying to integrate or belong or anything like that in the type of sense that was reflective in what was happening in high school. Now my sense of belonging is within how I master the language around me, which is the language of academia. So what I figure out my best way to succeed is to start reading. And that's how I started mastering the language. So I'm reading a book. That book is probably on the subject that I'm studying, that I'm there for. And I knew that my classmates who are native English speakers can just go through a chapter pretty quickly because they don't have to stop and highlight a word and let me look in the dictionary. What the hell does this mean? And how does it belong in this sentence or in the subject? So I would read a chapter, highlight what the issue that I have with, which is even can be a phrase or a sentence or just certain words. So I would highlight it, look it up. Thankfully, we got to a point where I didn't have to have a dictionary in my hand the whole time. I would just look at it on my phone or on my computer. So I would read something, highlight it, come back to it. What is it? And then not only read it again, read the sentence again with that word that I have full understanding of now. And not only that, what helped me is starting to explain to others what I've just read. That is a big part of my life here because my whole life I'm translating. I'm interpreting for someone or for myself. That is the big thing that I started to do where I felt if I can just read what I'm assigned to read and I'm able to interpret that, and not only interpret it, but translate it for someone, give that knowledge to someone else that I just read, I'm automatically learning it on a much deeper level. And that's how, and this is about me and my GPA, if you want to put the structure to it in a much bigger sense. High school was at 1.9. Barely graduating. The system just pushed you through, just wanted to get you out because obviously you were a problem case, you were struggling. And then when I went to a community college, I didn't know what I was doing. Nobody taught me how to learn properly, and I pushed through and I went through it, I think with 2.5, just enough to transfer my credits to another college. And then my undergraduate degree, I finished with 3.6, graduating with 3.6. And then when I'm back from a master's program, I got out of there with 3.9. So I just took how I was learning it. I finally realized that if I can read something, understand it, interpret it, because that's all I had been doing. I'm translating from my parents, I'm translating from a community member. And if I can just start mulling it through at the same time, the sense of belonging within the culture of academia was instant because my professors, my classmates saw me as someone who was striving to do better. And not only that they saw me as somebody who was interested in the subject, they saw me as someone who will grow within the academia just based on love for the subject. Once you see someone who's passionate and you grow and you realize what that passion is and you just hone in on it, it just flourishes. And it flourishes through how successful you are. And success just comes. Love is what you need to start with. And that's always, people always talk about, I'm just not doing good. I'm not doing it. There's a loss for a passion there. That's what when somebody tells me I'm not doing too good. Like my job is not doing that great or I'm struggling in class. That struggle in class is like, oh, sometimes the passion is not there, because if there's passion behind it, the success will come. And don't focus on success. Focus on the things you're passionate on.
Focus on the journey, the
Yeah.
results, and where you wind
Yeah.
up is a fun place to get to and look back.
Yeah.
But you can't be constantly looking at where you hope to be, because there's a very, very strong possibility that over the course of that journey, you're going to be swayed one way or the other, and you're going to find yourself in a completely different place. Yeah. Very, very happy, probably happier than you would have been if you got what you initially thought you wanted. Mm-hmm. But by letting yourself be present in that journey along the way, you give yourself so much more freedom to say, oh, you know what? I thought I wanted this, but now I've just discovered this, which is really cool. Let me pursue that a little bit. And if you're always open to learning and moving forward and advancing yourself and pursuing your passion instead of pursuing what you think someone else wants you to be or where you think society says you need to be, you're going to be so much better off in the long run. You will look back and say, shit, I'm glad that I took the time to explore some other paths too.
That is the truth. I really enjoyed the journey. I missed the journey of just going through a semester. Yes, the classes were hard, all these papers you had to write, there's exams, and it was just long days and long nights studying and everything, but I wouldn't change it for anything, because those are things you need, and I enjoyed thoroughly. And the enjoyment is where I thrived. My advice to anybody is find things you enjoy. It sounds like very simple, but majority of us are struggling in our life because we don't do things we enjoy.
Yeah, and let's just say this. Yeah. Do you right now love everything about your life?
No.
Neither do I. So there's no point at which you will ever sit back and say, you know what, things are perfect, I'm just going to cruise. You should always be thinking with the mindset of, I'm still on the journey. Until you die, you are still on that journey. Keep exploring, keep looking at new opportunities, new options. Even if you're in a career field right now, if someone older is watching this, and for those of you who are younger, and you're imagining where you want to be in your career, again, it's going to change over time. You're going to change as a person. You're going to grow. And your point is very well taken that you never really arrive. You're always in transit until you get to that final destination that we all get to, that same station at some point in life. But until then, man, keep looking.
Use your time wisely. You don't have a lot of time. None of us have a lot of time. If I was to go back and give myself advice, and I was 13 or 14, take some chances. Take a chance into looking into something different, explore other options. If you see a career fair or something like that, and that's not for me, I already know what I want to do. No, just go to that career fair. Listen to somebody who's presenting on robotics or how to assemble airplanes. Doesn't matter. Explore that other options. You'll be surprised how much opportunity is out there and how many options are there for different careers or things you want to do. And I wouldn't even think about what am I going to do for work, for job, what am I going to do with my life? You know, how useful I can be.
One of the most impactful things that I've ever heard was something you said to me. And it was the last time we talked, which is going to be in that forthcoming conversation that I teased. But you said when people ask you what you do for work, what do you tell them?
It was to make a difference in someone's life.
Yeah.
That's where you want to belong in. That's the part of life that I think everybody was to get to. It's a purpose-driven kind of life. And I have my center. And that center is, hey, I'm making a difference in someone's life.
So it doesn't matter what you do. Yeah. It doesn't matter. You can pick any job in the world. And that answer, I make a difference in someone's life, is probably the best answer I think I've ever heard. Because then it just invites conversation.
Sure.
And it immediately eliminates any boundary that you might feel for, you know, if you're talking to someone who's got a PhD in a science, or you're talking to someone who's a professional athlete or something like that. What do you do for a living? If the answer to that question is I make a difference in someone's life, there's no boundary between us. We're on common ground, and we can have a conversation and learn from each other without having that barrier of, oh, this person's smarter than me, or this person's more athletic than me, or this person's better looking than me. None of that matters if the root of it is, I'm here to make a difference in someone's life.
Go beyond the superficial. Once you go beyond the superficial, go to the root cause of why you're doing what you're doing. That in itself explains what people are in life and what they value. Sometimes you lose that perspective, even in my own life. It's like, I make a difference in someone's life. But there's times where you're like, is this really happening? Every once in a while, something will come through. I can read you an email right now that, in fact, I'll just pull it up because it's very short. And it's from a colleague. And that colleague was just passing by my office, and I just said hello, and just strike up a conversation that was no longer than 2 minutes. And the following day, she sends me a brief email, and the subject of it is thank you. And she said, "Hello, Elvir. I wanted to thank you for your caring nature. You are so insightful and have shared words of wisdom and encouragement with me that have really kept me going. I know that you feel my struggles in this position, and I wanted to let you know that you are appreciated."
That's awesome. And that then on those days where you're like, am I making a difference? Something like that tells you are, and you're on the right path and you're doing the right things because people notice, even if you don't see them notice all the time.
Right. You just have to maintain that path of, I'm just making a difference in someone's life, and that's my goal. And sometimes there's small little things that you make adjustments to, and those small things were just saying hello to a colleague and really listening to them, even if it's for 2 minutes. That is a short amount of time in a 8-hour day, and just saying hello and asking how you're doing.
And you can do that in school. You can do that to the person that you think doesn't have any friends, is standing at their locker by themselves, or looks like they're having a bad day, or sitting alone at the lunch table. You can make a huge transformative difference in someone's life that will not only give them a feeling that would inspire an email like that, but it will also inspire you and give you more confidence in yourself, promote more of that self-appreciation and value that you are contributing to someone else's life. Because at the end of the day, that's what being human is all about, is loving one another, contributing to the betterment of society as a whole. And so, to wrap all of this up, we started with a question of how do I stop feeling so dumb? And the answer is, you know what? It doesn't matter, honestly, right now, as long as your path ultimately is true to who you are and following the moral compass that you've set for yourself. Academically, you have to get by. But as Elvir has highlighted, you can come out of high school with a 1.9 GPA, come out of community college with a 2.5 GPA, and still work your way through a full degree and then a master's degree and get a job working in academia. The path is winding. There is no straight shot. There is no one direction. You don't have to have excellence in every subject or any subject to be excellent in your field. Pursue your passions, do what you're best at, spend most of your time honing that, and then just get by on the other necessities that are required, even if you're not the best at them.
And be good to yourself. And be good to yourself to the process and learn from it. Even if you are in a semester that's 2 months long, not only what have I learned, obviously, in the subject, but what have I learned about myself throughout this process? Was I down on myself a lot? How did I come out of that? So those are the tools you're also putting in your toolbox. And next time something like that happens, when you feel down on yourself, pull that knowledge out of the toolbox. What did I learn from last semester? How did I get beyond this challenge?
I think there's lessons in every failure. Yep. If you fail at something, whether you perceive it as a failure or you get an F on your paper, there's something to be learned from every failure in life, big or small. And if you do that, if you look for the lesson in there, you're going to improve every next step in any endeavor that you do. You can carry stuff forward.
For sure. Well said.
Hey, man, I can't thank you enough for sitting down and helping me answer some questions and just lending a new perspective to some of these things. Because like I said, you are such a colorful character with so much value to provide. And I know that this is going to be helpful for hopefully this young person who's struggling with math, but also for hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people out there that are struggling with ESL being a barrier to them trying to make their way, or any second language in any country, trying to make their way and understand that this is a barrier, no doubt, but it is not a roadblock that's going to stop you from progressing if you want to.
That's right. That's right. I appreciate the time, man. I really appreciate it. And I hope people take something from all this conversation and learn something about themselves throughout it. So I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. And again, if you guys want to hear Elvir's story, that's going to be going up in the next week or so. And yeah, this guy's got a hell of a story. So if you think that your life sucks and you had a really hard go of it, I think this will help you put some things in perspective. And you can see the smile on this kid's face. He's not lost any joy for life. And you're just a beacon for everybody.
You got to keep going.
All right, man.
All right. Appreciate it.
Thanks.
All right, brother.